MICA is probably one of the greatest advances in the ambulance service, certainly in this country, for a good many years.
Do you get quite a kick realising that you have been instrumental in saving people in this unit?
Fantastic kick. It's really beautiful, especially when the families come along afterwards and the kids have still got a father and the parents still have a partner. It's terrific.
With a common sense approach and a recognition of the skills and expertise of these men, the mobile intensive care ambulance could develop into one of the greatest single life-saving devices ever introduced to Australia.
It all came about in Melbourne initially because the College of Surgeons had a committee on road trauma. Professor Hughes was, Bill Hughes was the chairman of that committee, and he had approached the ambulance service with a possibility of improving the availability of ambulance transportation for people injured in motor car accidents. I had read a little bit about cardiopulmonary resuscitation and the concept that Frank Pantridge in Belfast had for providing resuscitation to people who died out of hospital, perhaps after a heart attack.
It really was born out of hospitals, and it was born with having a doctor in the ambulance. And then as time went by and the doctors realised the paramedics could be trained and do the role without them, the doctors came off the ambulance.
The first thing was that they had to be enthusiastic, and no one can ever criticise the ambulance service for lack of enthusiasm. John Bosfeld was the first person eventually who was put in charge of the concept, but as you say, the two Wallies were the drivers and they were only too keen to learn.
Graham Sloman conducted us on the tour, and when we got to the casualty, the old charge sister was told that these men will be eventually working on this unit and they'll be able to assist you in the casualty, and can you think of what sort of things they could do? And the only thing she could think was that we could make sure that the ambulance drivers put their trolleys back where they should be instead of leaving them outside.
The Royal Melbourne Hospital wasn't keen to have anything to do with treatment of people outside hospital, and the ambulance service was not keen that their drivers should be involved in resuscitating or helping to resuscitate people after road trauma or after a heart attack. So everybody was frightened of getting too much out into the community.
It seemed like everywhere you went, it was kind of a fight, and most of the medical profession didn't actually know what you were doing or how you could do things, and how can you possibly do this as an ambulance driver. And you still met at a large number of places and got asked, well, okay, I see that, but do you guys carry oxygen? And when you get to the house and you say, all right, well, we just want to stick in a drip, and it was like, oh no, you can't do that, just get them to hospital.
That was a tremendous battle, and we had a little book initially with about half a dozen drugs in, like digitalis, aramine and atropine, but it took years and years for the hospital and then the legal system in Victoria accepting that ambulance officers, if adequately trained, could administer drugs for saving life.
We weren't allowed to have morphine. They've been trying to get morphine on the ambulances since the 50s. And when they changed the Poisons Act, it then enabled us to get the drugs such as morphine and the other flow-on drugs that have occurred since then. And I think that's sort of change in medication and legislation helped enormously.
But the MICA unit is only a machine. What makes it work is the paramedic, the man who operates the unit. They're fully qualified to carry out pre-hospital coronary care, and this is where the MICA unit has proved most valuable.
We weren't born from a rule book. We were born working with a doctor. The doctor stepped away. We're still working with them, but in a different way.
We were still winning our spurs. We were still trying to make a place for ourselves within medical profession per se. You know, a good portion of the clinicians or hospitals and nursing, or you know, still saw us as ambulance drivers or you know, unskilled people and not educated people. So a lot of the early 80s was about consolidating the work that had been done in the 70s by the pioneers of MICA and starting to consolidate and grow and expand.
About 4 cars shot. And 3 ambulance here, please, 2 things. Right, ambulance here, thanks. We've got about 5 or 6 people being shot at this stage. Come north 150, we're going to move it.
No one expects violence on this scale in Melbourne. When all hell broke loose on Hoddle Street, their first reaction was to help.
It never happened before in Australia, and to suddenly be confronted by it and actually winding up right in the middle of the worst part of the ongoing scene.
You know, you sort of got out from the ambulance and there were people standing or crouching with guns drawn behind trees and lampposts and whatever else, and half of them in uniform and half aren't. It's really, that was the thing that was going through my mind, who are the crooks here, you know, and how many of them are there and where are they?
I started to walk out into the park, and I suppose I got about halfway when I saw the silhouettes of some wounded people lying on the ground. And as I was approaching them, there was a volley of gunfire sort of rang out. It was automatic gunfire, and it sounded very close, and I just hit the dirt.
I don't think anyone knows how they're going to react when they're put into that position, but it wasn't through an act of heroism or anything that we were actually there. I think the circumstances put us there, and any ambo could be put in that position, and I don't think anyone knows how they'd react until they're there.
When I did my MICA course, I was the 4th rural MICA paramedic in the region. They had none, or 3 prior to that. They were the leaders in the rural area to get MICA up and running down here.
Oh, it was just scary because we didn't know what we were getting into, and well, we had an idea, but we knew how hard it was, study, the exams, everything, and we wanted it to work too. So you got that pressure on you that it has to work.
80-knot winds and 30-metre high waves flattened a third of the Sydney-Hobart fleet. More than 40 yachts trapped in Bass Strait and at the mercy of Mother Nature at her most treacherous.
It was frightening. I mean, we had waves anywhere from 40 to 80 feet high. We had wind gusts up to 160 kilometres an hour. And the flying that the pilot achieved on that day is just nothing short of remarkable. There was one time there that the pilot was hovering at 80 feet above the surface of the ocean, and all of a sudden the yacht appeared in the windscreen of the helicopter on top of this 80-foot wave, and the pilot had to grab the controls and swing and move away to avoid being hit. So it was all pretty full on, a lot of pressure, and very challenging for all of us there.
You're a lot more isolated in the country with the distances involved, the terrain involved, the radio difficulties because of the terrain. It's a whole different set of skills, I found.
The rural community of Victoria as a whole have benefited from MICA. The level of care that we can provide on scene has definitely saved lives throughout the state of Victoria. I should say even other states, because sometimes our MICA officers do go into New South Wales in South Australia, and sometimes on the aircraft they end up in Tasmania.
A burst of gunfire sends shockwaves through the city. Shots fired by a gunman across William Street and Flinders Lane.
Essentially it was a scene of mass panic. We had 3 people on the ground with very significant injuries from a firearm, and normally paramedics are taught don't go into an area that is unsecured, don't go into an area where there is potential or actual threat to your safety. In this instance, we're on a large, busy Melbourne CBD corner with police and fire already in attendance, multiple bystanders, and the person who created this chaos, the person who pulled the trigger, we didn't know where they were. They could have been hiding around the corner. They could have been anywhere. So the challenge was to make some decisions with regards to, do we go in, do we stay back, do we actively treat, what do we do?
It's not about lights and sirens, although we all think it is. And it's not about the excitement, because it's very exciting. And it's not about the adrenaline rush, because you'll never get a bigger rush than resuscitating someone and knowing they're going home to their family. It's about how we care for people.
We're a lot more focused on the outcomes of our patients and what happens to them down the track, and not just patching them up or being a stopgap in whatever's gone wrong, but actually starting interventions and medical practice before they get into hospital to improve their long-term outcome.
MICA's been heavily involved in clinical trials over the last 10 or 15 years for very good reason, primarily to improve patient outcome. And it's not only to improve patient outcome for Victorians, but to improve patient outcomes for patients around Australia and ultimately around the world.
We've been involved really since the 1970s, since MICA started in this way, and particularly with regard to trauma. Victoria has world's best practice trauma care in terms of an integrated trauma system.
The relationship in Victoria between the doctors and the paramedics is the best, I think, anywhere in the world. There's a great respect for the role of doctors by paramedics, and there's a respect for the role of paramedics by the doctors.
We started in 71. It was really pretty much an in-house education program, and throughout the 80s and the 90s this moved to the Ambulance Officers Training Centre. It became an advanced diploma, then moved to Monash University, where it became a university advanced diploma, and now we're looking at the MICA qualification as a graduate diploma. I mean, that's 2/3 of a master's degree.
To go from where we were to where we are now and where we will go in the future is monumental. It was like going from a T-model Ford, to the fastest car in the world, within that period of time.
There's so many good times on MICA, because let's face it, sometimes you kick a lot of goals. Yeah. I mean, in all those patients, those sick patients, the asthmatics, the pulmonary edemas, the heart attacks, which are our bread and butter, the multi-traumas, the cardiac arrests, the electrocutions, the industrial accidents, the list goes on. And that's why we're here. Yeah. I mean, that's what keeps guys in the job.
To watch the move through the education, I think that the MICA people we have now are a far higher standard than we were. And if I look back honestly at our level of knowledge and what we did, I'm really staggered that the medical profession supported us to the level they did. People like Graham Sloman and David Hunt and David Komisarov and all those people went way, way out on a limb to ensure that we could do something to better serve the community that they couldn't reach from within the hospital walls. They took on their colleagues, their professional colleges, the state government, and they were just going to make it happen.
We were then, and I believe then, and we are now, the best intensive care paramedics in the world, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's because of the people that went before me, the people in my era, and the people that we've got now.